So this trip was supposed to go down in the summer of 2020, a couple months after my dad retired, but it was postponed for obvious reasons. So over the course of that year and a half of waiting, I got a little antsy and decided to start buying some video equipment so we could put something together while we were up there. So here it is. Enjoy. So our trip began here in Anchorage, where we picked up a rental car and headed south down Highway 1. 185 miles later, we arrived at our final destination of Nanilichik, which is a tiny little fishing village on the southern tip of the Kenai Peninsula. So we stayed at this little place called Soaring Eagle Lodge, which is right on the water off the Kenai Peninsula. It's a collection of about 8 small cabins. This one was ours right here, right by the cliff. We had been expecting kind of a bare bones fishing cabin, but it turned out to be really nice. We had our own lazy boys, a really big kitchen, a nice grill outside on the deck, a fireplace inside, and some really cool views of the beach right outside. And since we were looking right at the water, we got to watch the sun set every day at 1:30 a.m. and rise every day at 4:30 a.m. So we got that 3 hours of darkness. And this place is called Soaring Eagle Lodge for a reason, because there are giant bald eagles everywhere. So the only microphone I had was the one in the camera, and when it's in its waterproof case, it really muffles the sound, so you're just gonna have to listen to me narrate everything instead. So the weather is so harsh and the tides are so extreme here that there's no permanent harbors or landings that a regular pickup truck can use for about 40 miles each way up the coast. But thankfully there's this company here that has a couple large tractors, and they will take your boat down the beach, pull into the water, and drop you off. And once you're ready, they pull you out. So we're lucky these guys were here to get us in the water. The forecast had called for rain and high winds on this day, but as you can see, it's beautiful. It's blue skies, calm seas, and we really lucked out. I know we're almost 4 minutes into this fishing video and there hasn't been any fishing yet, so here you go. It didn't take too long after we got our lines wet for my dad to hook up with the first fish of the day, which would also turn out to be the largest fish of the entire trip. So this fish is so big that the captain's actually going to have to harpoon it to get it in the boat, so you'll see him do that here in a second. And it does not like it. Now these are very large and powerful fish, so the best thing to do once you get them aboard is to dispatch them immediately, both for our safety and to put them out of their misery so they don't have to suffer. The best way to do this is what is called ringing the bell, which you're going to see our captain do here in a second. This is where you strike them in the head with an aluminum bat, and they have very large bony skulls, so it makes a stinging sound like a ringing a bell. So yeah, listen up.
ring in the bill, huh? Yeah, warm my ass down. Wow.
Yeah, I tried to dry off the lens and I just made it worse. So this is our ship's captain slash fishing guide for the day, Captain Grayson. Super cool guy. I believe he was originally from the south, but he's up here in Alaska working the fishing boats. Probably one of the best fishing guides I've ever had. So this last fish you're going to see here is the largest one our boat pulled in for the day. This gentleman in the red shirt to the right caught it, and it was just shy of 100 pounds.
Oh, yeah. Jesus Christ. Oh, baby. Yeah.
Those two small pieces in the center of the grill are halibut cheeks. They have the texture of crab and they're probably the best bite in the whole fish. There's nothing quite like grilling fresh fish outside and staring at the water that you just pulled it out of. It's pretty awesome. So this is Nick, our guide for the day. Super cool guy. He actually lives in Miami, Florida 9 months out of the year, where he does big game charter fishing out of there. And then 3 months of summer, he comes up here to Alaska and does salmon charters. So yeah, super jealous. We launched out into this small glacial lake and had about a 10-minute ride to meet up with the river. This is probably going to look a little grainy because I'm pushing this little camera to the max here, but if you look closely, you can see a mother moose with her baby on the shore drinking out of the lake. After we made it to the main river, it got a little choppy, but not too bad. Nobody went for an accidental swim, so it worked out. So the technique you see us using here is called flossing. We use about a 7-foot fly rod with a 6-foot leader. Leader on top, you have a couple ounces of weights and just a plain J-hook on the bottom. And what you do is whip the line into the water as hard as you can because you want that weight to get to the bottom. You do that upstream and let it drift down until it's about 2 or 3 feet in front of you. Then you pull back as hard as you can. And hopefully you snag a sockeye and bring it ashore. So I somehow never got any footage of my dad or myself landing any sockeye, but 2 other people did come with us on the trip, and the girl standing next to me landed one when I had my camera on, so check it out. You can see her almost get it to shore right away, then once it kind of realizes what's happening, it takes off downstream just to make the fight as hard as possible. So these guys are a lot of fun to catch. Eventually she works it back up, and our guy gets out there with a net and pulls it in. So I don't have any footage of us catching the fish, but I do have footage of the fillets that we ate for dinner. So unfortunately, the weather finally caught up with us, and our second halibut trip was canceled, but we made the most of it. We just hung out and grilled up some more of our salmon and had some really good local IPAs from Denali Brewing. And for dinner, made some tri-tip, sauteed mushrooms, and sipped a little whiskey and watched some old westerns. So this might have been the coolest part of the trip, but I don't know. I can't decide. But I've never been in a pontoon plane before, and flying out of a tiny lake in the middle of nowhere, Alaska is pretty awesome. secluded lake out in the middle of protected land, so there's no road access or any other way to get here other than plane. So our boats had already been flown out and were waiting for us. It looks like they're up on the beach right now, but they're actually not. I'm not even sure where the shore is. That stuff is a aquatic plant that grows a couple feet thick and floats on top of the water. So the whole time we were out there, I never touched land, but you can walk around on that and not really know the difference. It's pretty crazy. So on this trip, we went out with a couple of guys from Texas, pretty cool, and our guide. And he took us over to our first spot, which was a small little cutout in the side of the lake where a glacial waterfall was feeding in fresh water. So almost immediately we hooked up with a nice sockeye. You can see this one is bright red. It's a little further along in the spawning process than the silver ones we were catching earlier. And yeah, looks pretty cool. Next, we headed over to the other side of the lake to another creek mouth that was feeding into the lake, and there were a lot of salmon spawning there. Unfortunately, there was a lot of other fishermen as well, but we dealt with it, and there was enough fish to go around, as well as bears. So this is the spot. This is where the salmon are at. You can see kind of a line of boats here. Everyone's waiting to get closest to the creek. You can see somebody in that forward front boat bringing in fish right now, splashing around. So everyone gets about 25 minutes or so at the creek mouth, and then the line just keeps on moving. So we were fishing while we were waiting, but there was a lot to look at to keep us occupied. So Mama Bear and her babies came over, and she decided to go for a swim right in front of our boat, so we weren't able to fish during that time, but it was cool to be so close to her and watch her and the babies. Okay, it was cool for a little while, but after about 10 minutes or so of my fishing pole just sitting on the boat, I was starting to get a little annoyed at Mama Bear. Eventually, Mama Bear and the babies left, and we got to move up to the primo spot, and we started catching fish. Then another family of bears showed up, but they were courteous enough to stay out of the water. So at this point of the trip, I was one fish away from reaching my limit, and we were about to lose that primo spot to the next boat, so I was trying my best to catch one more. And after just a couple more casts, I hook up with one of the toughest fighting fish I caught on this whole trip. It wasn't the biggest, it was probably only about 7 or 8 pounds, but it fought like it was 50. It was fun. I know I've been playing this real low-key, sort of relaxing music, but this is the music that was playing in my head when I was fighting this fish. And that is the proper way to end a day of fishing. At this point, I'm maxed out. I'm done fishing, and my dad's about to max out himself. I believe he catches his last one right here. Then a couple minutes later, we give up the good spot and head back to the plane. On our way back to the plane, the weather took a turn for the worst. You can see some rain in the distance there, and the lake started getting real choppy. You can see the camera bouncing up and down. So we thought, the day's over. We're getting out of here just in time. But we were surprised to find out that pretty much the coolest part of the day was about to happen, and we had no idea it was coming. So that giant mountain of ice you can see out the windshield of the plane here is Wolverine Glacier. We're about to fly over it and get a tour. When I say fly, I should really say skim over it, because a couple points were only about 50 feet above the ice. It was a little terrifying, but super amazing. Now that I'm recording this, I'm deciding that this was the coolest part of the whole trip. So So day 5, we were back out on the river again with Nick, doing a very similar trip, except for this time, as you can see, the river was super crowded. But Nick knew a spot much further down, so we just kept going, and luckily it was empty. So we killed it, yeah. We all maxed out, us and 3 other people that came with us, and it was a lot of fun. On our 6th and final day, we are deep sea fishing out of the port city of Homer. This was supposed to be a multi-species trip, but as you can see, the water got really rough. The currents picked up, it got a little stormy, so we weren't able to get close enough to shore to get the rockfish and cod and everything else that we were going to go for, so we ended up just going out back into the middle and hitting up some halibut. So the seas were rough and the current was really strong, but we both maxed out on fish again, so it was a good day. So out of all the wildlife we saw on this trip, the thing we probably saw the most of was otters. They are everywhere out here in the ocean. But despite that, I was not able to get any good footage of one. So this was my last chance. We're on our way back in on our last day, and I finally got one, and I was so happy. And then we pulled into the harbor, and there was one just chilling right by the walkway. That was just there for the taking, so at least I got 2. The last thing I wanted to show you from this day was these guys on the boat that were cleaning our fish for us on the way in. I don't know if you can really tell by this footage, but we're going really fast and the water is really rough and we're getting tossed around. And these guys are both standing on the back of the boat and cleaning these fish, just perfect precision. I don't think they left an ounce of meat on the bones. I don't know how they did that. I was struggling to stand up and these guys were working like nothing was happening and they were doing just an amazing job. So it was a show. I don't know if you can really see it from this video, but watching these guys was amazing. So that's it. That's the end of the video. I'd like to say thank you to my parents for funding this whole crazy week that I put together. It was fun. Probably one of the best vacations I've ever taken in my life. It's going to be hard to beat. And happy retirement, Dad. That's it. See you later.